Now recognizes the gentlelady from New Mexico, Ms. Stansbury. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to welcome our panelists, and in particular, I want to welcome Ms. Johnson. I just witnessed an exchange, and I wanted to just take a point of personal privilege here and say that we're grateful that you're here. It takes a lot of courage for members of the public to come and testify in front of this body, and I want to remind my colleagues that this is the people's house, not the lobbyist's house. Okay? And that we should really treat members of the public who come before this body with the due respect that they deserve as they come before this body. So this topic is very personal to me. I grew up in a working family, and many people do not know this, but my parents were both energy workers. In fact, my mom was one of the very first women operating engineers in the state of New Mexico, and operated heavy equipment and helped build the San Juan Generating Station, which is the coal-fired power plant that is under energy transition in northwestern New Mexico, and that many of our Diné Navajo community members work at. My father was an oil and gas welder who worked in the oil fields for some of the companies whose lobbyists, I'm sure, are here in this audience today. And when the bottom dropped out of the oil and gas industry in the early 1980s, my parents had to leave Farmington, New Mexico and move to Albuquerque, which is why I grew up in the city. Because this industry rises and falls on boom and bust cycles, and our working families, our working people, and our communities pay the price for the profits that these industries skim off the top as we ride that wave. And so as I have taken this role as a member of Congress, as a former legislator, and as an American, as a New Mexican who cares deeply about my communities, I see one of my primary responsibilities as ensuring that our communities can make a just and equitable transition, that they have opportunities and investments and a seat at the table so that they are able to participate and not just be subject to the energy industry. So as I take my role as ranking member and oversight, I am hoping to elevate the voices of our communities, to provide opportunities for people who are from our communities to come and testify and participate in these hearings, for the voices of our working people to actually have a seat at the table after decades of not being able to participate in the process. Now, NEPA and permitting is a very select slice of what it means to have energy democracy, as Ms. Johnson has talked about in her testimony. So I really want to take this opportunity to lay out a vision for what we can do through this body, to lift up our communities, to help foster a just transition, to implement the largest investment in climate action ever in the history of this country that this body passed in August of this year, which will make billions of dollars in investments in our communities and help create millions of jobs in states like mine. And if we are smart, and if we are just, and if we are equitable, and we actually pull those chairs around the table and involve our communities in that work, we will have a just, equitable transition that gives people a sustainable life and a sustainable economy. I also plan, of course, through my role on oversight, to meet our trust and treaty obligations to our tribes, to work on public lands and water issues, and to address, of course, the drought that is impacting communities across the West. Because we are in the people's house, because this is what we were elected to do. This is why we are here. So I want to take this opportunity to ask Ms. Johnson once more, I know you've already shared many of your thoughts. Can you please share with us your vision and how you see this body can help to empower communities to make a just and equitable transition as we are building a new energy economy? Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much for the acknowledgement and your question. I think because of the rich resources that this body holds, our public lands, it's really critical and important that as you shape policies and practices related to that, that you, as I noted, center environmental justice in those considerations, in those deliberations, and go back to those 3 questions that I mentioned. Are you advancing an energy source or expanding an energy source that creates harm in communities, expands racially disproportionate economic, racial and economic impacts, and harms communities? I think if you keep those 3 questions at the forefront of what you're doing, we will get to that future that you described in your comments.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. And Mr. Chair, thank you for having this hearing, and I yield back.